History and facts about the first man to do white wedding ceremonies, the untold story of Prince Albert and love that changed the world. Weddings are some of the happiest moments in a person's life. The laughter, the music, the dancing, the food, and, of course, the bride walking down the aisle in her beautiful white dress, all these moments make weddings magical. But have you ever stopped to think about where the idea of a white wedding came from? Who started it? Who was the first man to actually hold a white wedding ceremony, the kind we see today with a bride in white, standing before a priest, exchanging vows and rings? This is the story of how the white wedding began. It's a journey through time, filled with love, mystery, royalty, and a man whose quiet choices changed how the entire world celebrates marriage. So let's go back, far back, into history, to find out who this first man really was, and how his decision still shapes our world today. The term white wedding might sound simple, but it carries a deep meaning. Today, it represents a traditional formal wedding, especially in Christian and Western cultures. The bride wears a white gown, the groom wears a suit or tuxedo, and the ceremony is usually held in a church or chapel. But long ago, people didn't marry like that. Before the 1800s, brides didn't wear white. They wore red, blue, yellow, green, even black. The goal was to wear the best dress, not a specific color. In fact, in many parts of the world, white was considered an odd or unlucky color. So how did white become the symbol of weddings? And who was the first man to make it happen? The story begins hundreds of years ago, in the royal courts of medieval Europe. Around the year 1406, a young woman named Philippa of England was preparing to marry King Eric of Pomerania, a man known for his bravery, youth, and charm. Their marriage was a political alliance between two powerful kingdoms. But something strange happened that day. Philippa decided to wear a white gown lined with fur instead of the colorful robes other brides wore. People gasped when they saw her. White was not a common wedding color. It was hard to keep clean and was only worn by the rich. But King Eric didn't stop her. He proudly stood by her side. Together, they walked into the church for what became the first recorded white wedding ceremony in European history. King Eric might not have known it, but his wedding with Philippa started something extraordinary. That day, they made history together, and he became the first man ever known to have a white wedding ceremony. Now, let's be honest, Eric's wedding didn't immediately change the world. People still loved bright, bold colors. In those days, white didn't mean purity or innocence. It meant luxury. Only the rich could afford fine, clean white fabric. Still, that one moment, that one royal wedding, planted a small seed. Over the next few centuries, the idea of white as a special wedding color quietly spread among the noble families of Europe. But it would take one more man, 4 centuries later, to make the white wedding a worldwide phenomenon. Fast forward to 1840, in London, England. The bells of St. James's Palace rang through the city. Crowds gathered to see a young queen walk down the aisle. Her name was Queen Victoria, and she was about to marry her beloved Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Victoria could have chosen any color she wanted for her dress. She was the Queen of England, the most powerful woman in the world at that time. Red, gold, or even royal blue would have been fitting for a monarch. But instead, she chose white, a simple, elegant satin gown trimmed with handmade lace. And her husband, Prince Albert, loved it. He was a man of intelligence and taste, and he supported her choice completely. Together, they created a wedding so beautiful, so romantic, that the newspapers of the time couldn't stop talking about it. Paintings of their ceremony spread across Europe. Magazines described every detail. For the first time, people saw marriage not just as an agreement between families, but as a celebration of love. Prince Albert's wedding to Queen Victoria became the model for what we now call the white wedding. He became the first man in modern history to have a white wedding that influenced millions of people. From that moment, white weddings became the dream of every bride and groom around the world. History and facts. But why did the color white capture so many hearts? At first, it was because white looked pure, peaceful, and royal. Queen Victoria said she chose it to show simplicity and humility, not wealth or power. But the public gave it new meaning. They saw white as a color of innocence, love, and a new beginning. Prince Albert stood proudly beside her, and together they gave people a new picture of marriage, a union of equals, not just a royal arrangement. Before their time, weddings were often political or financial agreements. But Victoria and Albert's marriage was based on real love. Their affection for each other touched everyone who heard their story. It made people believe in love again. And soon, everyone wanted to have a wedding just like theirs, elegant, emotional, and full of white lace. As time went on, the idea of the white wedding spread far and wide. The Industrial Revolution made fabric cheaper, and more people could afford fancy clothes. White dresses became easier to buy and clean. By the early 1900s, white weddings had become the standard in Western countries. When photography was invented, the image of the bride in white became iconic. Then came Hollywood. Movies in the 1930s and 1940s, filled with glamorous brides and dramatic wedding scenes, made the white wedding an international dream. People from Africa to Asia, from Europe to the Americas, began to copy the tradition. And while most people remembered Queen Victoria as the woman who wore the first famous white dress, few realized that it was Prince Albert, the man beside her, who made it meaningful. He stood for love, partnership, and progress. He was not just a groom. He was a visionary. That's why he is remembered today as the first man to popularize the white wedding ceremony, the man whose love story helped turn a royal event into a global tradition. But there's something mysterious about how this tradition grew. Long before Europe, other cultures had already used white in their own wedding rituals, though with very different meanings. In ancient Rome, brides wore white tunics called tunica recta, tied with a special belt. For them, white symbolized happiness and celebration, not purity. In ancient China, white actually meant mourning and death, so red, not white, was the lucky color for weddings. Red symbolized joy and prosperity. So how did white change from a symbol of wealth or sadness into one of love and purity? It wasn't just one event, it was a slow transformation, shaped by culture, religion, and imagination. Christianity helped too. Many churches began to teach that white represented holiness and spiritual cleansing. The color became linked with the idea of starting life anew. But in truth, it was the love between Prince Albert and Queen Victoria that gave white weddings their soul. He was the man who made it popular. The man who stood by his bride and made her choice the most fashionable decision in history. Let's look at some fascinating facts about the first man of the white wedding. 1. Prince Albert was not born in England. He was from a small German duchy called Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. When he married Victoria, some people doubted him, but his loyalty and love quickly won the nation over. 2. He designed part of their wedding himself. Albert helped plan the ceremony details, from the decorations to the music. He was passionate about art and design, and his touch gave the wedding its timeless beauty. 3. He believed marriage was a partnership. Unlike many men of his time, Albert saw Victoria as his equal. He supported her as queen and as a wife, and she often said that he made her a better ruler. 4. He was a father of 9 children. Their love was not just for show. Victoria and Albert raised a large family, and their descendants married into royal families across Europe. Many royal weddings afterward followed their white theme. 5. He changed global culture without realizing it. When Albert supported Victoria's white wedding, he wasn't thinking about history. He was simply a man in love. But that simple choice changed how billions of people would one day marry. The story of the first man to do a white wedding is not just about dresses and colors. It's about the power of love and partnership. Before Albert, weddings were about arrangements. After Albert, they became about emotion, unity, and romance. That's why, even today, every time a groom stands at the altar and sees his bride walk in wearing white, he's continuing the story that Albert began nearly 2 centuries ago. He's taking part in a history that started with courage, with devotion, and with a single simple word, yes. History and facts, but there's something almost mystical about it, too. Think about how one moment, one choice, can echo across centuries. A man and woman stood in a church in 1840. They said their vows, exchanged rings, and walked out as husband and wife. And yet, that same scene has repeated millions of times since, in different countries, different languages, and among people who've never even heard of Queen Victoria or Prince Albert. That's the magic of history. You never know when a single act of love will change the entire world. So, when you see a wedding, the white flowers, the elegant gown, the music that makes your heart beat faster, remember this: it all began with a man who loved his bride deeply enough to make her dream come true. He didn't chase attention. He didn't seek fame. He simply stood beside her, proudly, as the world watched, and together, they created something that would live forever. That man was Prince Albert, the first man to do a white wedding ceremony that inspired billions. He may not have known it, but he started a revolution of romance. Even today, nearly 200 years later, the white wedding is one of the most universal celebrations of love. It crosses cultures, languages, and religions. People may change the music or the traditions, but the image of the bride in white remains powerful. And behind that image, behind every wedding photo, every bouquet toss, every "I do," stands a man from history, smiling quietly, watching from the pages of time. His name is Albert, his legacy is love, and his story will never fade. Thank you for watching History and Facts. If you enjoyed this story about Prince Albert, the man who helped shape the white wedding tradition, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next amazing history story. History is full of love, mystery, and lessons that still shape our world today. Share this video with someone who loves history and romance, and let's keep discovering the untold stories of the past together. Until next time, this is History and Facts, reminding you that every great story begins with a moment that changed everything. Dizzy, stay curious, stay inspired, and see you in the next video.